Good morning, everyone. It is Monday, June 22nd, 2020. We are coming to you live from Washington State from our studio. You are our studio audience. We are super excited because it's Take a Break with Drake. Weekdays at 7, it's you, the audience, who will determine if we continue meeting at 7. Drake will ask that question today. America's Bible teacher, Dr. Drake Travis.
Welcome, Aaron Wickland.
Welcome.
Yes, Aaron is I tell you, he was the funnest guy to study with in college because
Good morning, Eric Dean, too.
He was so on it. Eric Dean, yes.
You'll notice our different setup today, but go ahead, Drake. You were talking about Aaron Wickland.
Yes, Aaron was so exciting to study with because he would get so into it. He was like studying in a jungle gym.
Good morning, everyone. It is Monday.
Might as well have had a mini trampoline in there.
Today, but go ahead, Drake. You were talking about Aaron Wickland.
What is that sound, dear?
It's me checking to make sure our audio's going.
Okay, audio is going.
Yeah, it's going so great.
Eric Dean. And I also, wife and I caught up with Eric Dean and his wife 2 weeks ago. And
Angela gave me her cookie recipe.
Oh, yeah. Keto.
Cookies.
Aren't all these words? Another word that kind of freaks me out lately is Pilates. Ladies are doing Pilates and eating keto. And, okay, what do all these words mean now? Whatever. Hey, wife and I kicked this thing off 2 months ago, and
has it been 2 months?
It's been 2 months, and with all this shutdown stuff, it's very interesting to me that the people that burn the churches are not getting a whole lot of prosecution today, but those that attend churches are being threatened with jail time. Interesting, as the East and the West are getting more similar all the time. But this guy encouraged us. He says, hey, just start a show. He says, everybody's on a level playing field now. Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon,
all the Jimmys.
Colbert, yeah, all the Jimmy Jack Johns. Are,
Jimmy Crack Corn, and I don't care.
Yeah, they're just doing their shows from home. He says, do it, give it a shot. And so, we're adjusting. As you know, I've got earphones on today. Wife is trying to.
I'm in the booth.
She's dictating from another booth. We have a very quality audio booth.
Yeah.
And this is our little studio here. When you got to make ditties, you can see behind me. How do I point to this thing? Yeah.
There you go.
Behind me, we have a keyboard. So, yeah,
I can hook that up and I can play on.
So
I could be playing music during your entire set, Drake.
Yeah. So we're 2 months into this now. Not just 1 month, and I just wanted to ask you. I do a la carte. I want to make what you want to eat. I don't know what mealtime was yours, but my mother decided what we eat and how much we eat. She would actually put the food on her place here. And my big brother, was the center on the football team, he was given a pile, and our little sister, who was portions. I mean, she knew what to do and how much, and. But I don't want to say, here's what you want. Here's what
We're asking for feedback.
Yeah,
is this time good?
Some feedback, please.
Is 7 o'clock good, or what do you think about 8 o'clock?
Yeah, because we're just kind of scratching our heads. Should we move this to 8 a.m.? Would that be better? Like, now it's in my commute and it interrupts. I don't know. Everybody's been.
Please let us know in the comments. Yes, and also the length of the show. We were getting some feedback. Should it be 20 or 30 minutes?
Yeah, and some of the.
Yeah. So there's just some questions to toss out there. Boy, Eric and Aaron, they're like 7.
7 a.m. is great. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I was up at 5 this morning, brushing over the ideas for today.
Because you're amazing like that.
Yeah. So, feedback, please. And I want to just tell you, one of the things that's really inspired me lately. I mean, I have a doctorate. I have a master's in New Testament, a doctorate in leadership, a bachelor's in Old Testament, and it was called a biblical literature degree. I finished college in Jerusalem at Jerusalem University College, and I had a 3,000 to 2,800 volume library.
It was extremely heavy.
Yeah,
We
and
moved it many times.
It actually, cr- it actually mashed the axle on our trailer on one of the moves. We had some extra books in there too. And we just got to where I just couldn't move it anymore. And so I've given my massive library to a seminary, and I know all the stuff that was in there. But the thing that's really blessing me, Brainville, lately is this. Now, does that? I don't know if that comes out right.
Well, you can see it right there on the screen, I hope.
Is that straight or
Yeah.
is it backward?
No, it's straight.
It's straight, okay. 'Cause sometimes when you film on your phone, it comes out backward. But this is so helpful. These guys are in Tustin, California. They've moved to Peabody, Massachusetts, where Christian Book Distributors is. But this is so helpful. This, when
Because it's visual learning, right?
Yeah, and you
Yeah.
get the layout. You realize that, a lot of people don't realize when they read that Kings, Chronicles, while those 4 books are going on, virtually all the prophets are being written, and it's happening at the same time. You read something.
Are you saying it's interwoven?
Interwoven. So when you read Kings and Chronicles, all the prophets are going on, and then you get done with Kings and Chronicles, and it's 1100 BC to 500, 400 BC. Malachi was around 400 BC. So you get the 700-year period, and then you start reading the prophets, and some of them you go, wait a minute, didn't I read this before? And you can feel scrambled. A senior citizen told me once, he says, something, I've been a Christian for 60, 65 years, and I've been in church forever, and I love the Lord, and wherever I read in my Bible, I don't know where I am. And he says, and he told me, it was about the best thing I've ever heard. He says, but when you explain it, I get it. And I can go, oh, yes, wow, got it. And I like that. I like explaining it. I like it to make sense. I want it to make sense to you. I don't want you to talk like the rat near the beginning of Ratatouille. And he says, what are you eating? I don't really know. Where are you in your Bible? I don't really know. It's sad, but so many people are like that.
Well, hey, just to be fair,
Yeah.
the Bible, it's not simply a book, it's a collection of books. So
Yeah.
it's a library.
Yeah, it's
and
a
I don't,
library.
and I feel like some people, I don't want to put people down because
No.
there's a whole lot going on there. And it's not like throughout the years in education, the education focus for many years was just on a small portion of history. So,
Oh, yeah.
Ancient history, I don't even think we covered ancient history till maybe high school back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
Although maybe my teachers were like, well, you weren't paying attention.
Yeah, I got a distant, wispy idea of it.
Yeah.
Starting in high school, but I've been a Christian for 15 years, 20 years before I started to go, oh, yes, okay. Of course, I wasn't really paying attention. I was a bit of a goofball growing up.
I don't believe that for a second.
Much more like a kangaroo monkey than a student.
I cannot
But,
imagine having you as a student.
But anyhow, if I really urge you to get this book, and as I study this book, and I just pour over it like.
Hey, I could even put a link in the
sure.
chat or
Yeah.
something. Maybe I could do that.
I urge you to get this Rose book, and there's several types of them, but it lays things out in chart form, and you'll start to go, oh, that happened during. I get it. So I just want you to look in your Bible and go, oh, I love this part. I remember reading in. When I first started taking Greek, our assignments was to read John 3:16, the most famous verse in the Bible, or as Al Gore calls it, John 16:3, my favorite verse.
John 16:3.
Yeah, and we had to
goodness.
diagram, sentence diagram. Kids don't know how to do this anymore, but we had a diagram, John 3:16 in Greek, and most of us were in tears, realizing the import, the impetus, the magnanimous nature of John 3:16. You've just gotten used to it, and so you kind of don't see it anymore. Anyhow, I wanted to give a Bible the big picture anymore, and I have a question to ask you at the end. So, anyhow, about 4,000 BC, Adam and Eve leave the garden. And by the way, they didn't have Cain and Abel right away. The Cain and Abel, it's the chapter right next, and you read it, start reading it 10 seconds later. But Cain and Abel didn't happen for a long time later, when Cain and Abel were adults. Cain and Abel were, we're Americans. We think, two kids and call it. Cain and Abel were not their only children. Adam and Eve had dozens of children.
You think?
They lived 950 years.
So what are the what are the estimates? Because I know that what's the books, the Jewish books that give those estimates?
The Jewish books, and I you don't want to tell a rabbi, you don't know. These guys have studied this stuff
and debated it
on top of the other guys that have studied all this stuff. Adam and Eve had a minimum of 44 children. I've read this in many places. They had a minimum of 44 children. You can't have that many kids. How can you give them their Freudian this and that? Oh, jeez, that is so much.
Freud hadn't been born yet.
Yeah, people think, you've got to space out your children to give them individual time, or they won't develop their Carl Jungian self-esteem. Irish twins, what a great way to go. Have them 9 months apart.
Oh my goodness.
Because they can play up and grow up with each other, and they do much better with that.
Well,
anyhow, Adam and Eve left the garden in 4004. A Bishop Ussher determined it was 4004.
In the year 4004.
Yeah, we don't know how long Adam and Eve were in the garden. Centuries. It wasn't millions of years, because the geology studies of the Earth prove that this Earth is not. That's another whole study.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing.
I will get to that and explain.
Drake, tell me, how is this the big picture? We're starting at the beginning. Are you just kind of?
I'm just going to give you the sections of the Bible, and just. If we can, that's
what I was curious about.
See how it fits together.
Tell us what you're going to tell us.
So the 8 major sections of the Bible, 7, is the first is creation to Babel. Genesis 11 is the Tower of Babel. It takes us right up to Abraham. Before the flood, it's called the antediluvian world, the pre-deluge. Antediluvian. So that's the world. It was such a different world that we have now. And from leaving Eden to the flood is 1,600 years. Now, Adam was alive for 950 of that. Noah was alive before the flood for 650. So Adam and here's Adam and Noah. They almost overlap. There's about a century from the death of Adam to the birth of, so they didn't know each other. But there were people who lived during that whole time that knew Adam and knew Noah. So Noah could get the stories secondhand from Adam. What was like before the fall? Oh my goodness, I got to tell you about it. And these guys could relay the stories to Noah. Now, Noah's son, Shem, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Shem lived, and wife is adjusting the lighting. We're always adjusting here. Shem lived for 3-4 centuries after the flood, long enough to know Adam. Can you... Abraham. Shem lived long enough to know Abraham. I'm just telling you, I'm not saying, drop all your theology and listen to me. I think that Shem was Melchizedek, the righteous king. That's what it means in Hebrew. And so you've got a guy that knew the pre-flood world because Shem lived 100 years before the flood, and then he lived several hundred years after the flood, long enough to be a contemporary of Abraham. So you've got the beginnings, and that's creation of Babel. You've got the patriarchs, Genesis 12 through the end of Genesis. Abraham, Isaac. We have 2 chapters on Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. Studying those 4 guys will give you an entire compendium of the morals of what this world needs to be. Origin, Genesis 1 and 2. Meaning, why are we here? Walking with God is why we're here. Morality, it's all over Genesis. And destiny, God tells you where we're headed. And it comes up in Genesis. The Trinity is woven into Genesis. The first 2 verses of the Bible, we have the initial hints of the Trinity already. It's fascinating stuff. So you have the beginnings up to Genesis 11. You have the patriarchs. And the patriarchs run from I'll just go real general centuries here, 2200 BC to 1800 BC. Those 400 years. The time in Egypt was 400 years. The time of the patriarch is 400 years. Joseph dies in 1805 BC. 1805 AD, Jefferson is president, and Lewis and Clark are on their journeys. 1805
We
AD.
just traveled their trail yesterday.
Yes, for Father's Day, wife and I took a drive and had a little beverage and had a dinner, and we were on the Lewis and Clark Trail yesterday. That's 1805 AD. 1805 BC, Joseph is wrapping it up, and they are getting ready to bury him in one of the most ornate graves in Egypt, and it's still there today. And you can tell this is not an Egyptian burial tomb. It's a Hebrew one. The coat of many colors is decipherable. Fascinating stuff. This is in Egypt today. I got a text from someone in Alexandria, Egypt yesterday. Oh, come, speak at our gatherings. Oh, my goodness, Lord.
We have been getting invitations lately.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
The invitations lately. People, I saw you online. Oh, my goodness. Would you please come to Ghana, Africa? There will be 8,000, 9,000 people you can mentor. Please come to Pakistan. We will gather 8,000 in our crusade. You need to mentor all these new leaders, new believers in Pakistan. They want us to come this year. and then one comes from Egypt. Oh, Jesus. Guide us, Lord, please.
Yeah, I know, because there's so much going on. Anyway, Lewis and Clark, and going back to the 18 prior to that. So
beginnings.
Yes, beginnings.
The patriarchs, Joseph. The Exodus, 3. Moses to Sinai, all the way up to Canaan. They just reach, well, let's find a line here. They just reach the point where it's time to enter Canaan, but they don't go in. And it's Moses and Sinai. The 10 Commandments, the countries that adhere to these thrive. The countries that trash the 10 Commandments are destined, and they will bash. They're just going to come apart. We've got to obey the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments are on our, they're on the wall in D.C., and it shows Moses holding the 10 Commandments. I think the writers want to tear those down too. Should you let wild people run the culture? I don't think so. Anyhow, the Exodus takes us up. It's Moses, and Moses writes Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, and at the end of Deuteronomy we have the end of Moses' life. Moses also writes Genesis, and this is stuff that happened up to 26, 27 centuries before he was born. God just told him. Moses couldn't write that because he wasn't there. Well, what are you going to have? 9 different guys writing the book of Genesis? Moses wrote Genesis. God just told him. He sat in the tent and talked with God as it was time to explain world creation.
There's a great movie about that. It's called The Moses Controversy.
Yeah.
It's a
And
documentary.
by the way, we're showing that next in our theater. We are
As soon as we can.
Yeah, as soon as we can open up and have a public meeting. Anyhow, but the conquest of Canaan, Joshua and Judges, 2 books, 325-year period. Now, you think back to 325 years now, that's back to 1695. I didn't know my ABCs in 1695, but it was going to be soon. So 1695 to now, that King Philip's War had just wrapped up in the northeastern Americas in 1695, and that time period is Joshua and Judges. And Judges, oh my Lord, it says early in Judges, they forsook the law of Moses. Joshua, great battalion leader, but he didn't mentor the next generation the way Moses mentored him. And we have a entire culture that has no anchor. And I get concerned because today the kids growing up are taught antithetical material to the Bible in the schools. They're not taught the Pledge of Allegiance. They're not taught to pray in school. They're not taught the Constitution. And the kids are going nuts. And what's been going on in 2020 proves it. You've got to teach the next generation the Scripture, the sacred literature. You got to teach them about Christ. Otherwise, they have no anchor. Anyhow, the conquest, Joshua and Judges, and they go into the land. But after this conquest, we have the monarchy and the divided kingdom. Samuel is in 1060 BC. Saul is appointed king in 1050 BC. So Samuel and Saul are both alive. They're both in prominent people for 30 years of the 3 decades. They're alive at the same time. And Saul is this control freak leader, and Samuel is the prophet who keeps trying to tell Saul, you're okay, you got good ideas, but your heart isn't right. You don't look to God. You don't trust God. You don't act God. You don't walk with God. And Samuel almost has this attitude about Saul that's basically, you idiot. And so Samuel comes on the scene in 1060. Saul becomes the king in 1050, 40 years. In 1010 BC, David is king. And in 970 BC, Solomon becomes king. Solomon was in one building. And Solomon, I've been to Israel. I've taught, toured, and studied. Solomon in one building had the same amount of wealth that Bezos or Bill Gates owns their entire empire worldwide. Solomon had that much wealth in one building. You have no idea how prominent Solomon was. The guy was beyond huge. Beyond wealth is, oh my. If you could walk through Solomon's kingdom today, and it can't be built because we will not invest that much in one thing in one place. Because our thing, God isn't worth it. Just spread it around. Anyhow, but the monarchy. Solomon's gone. The next generation says, jack the taxes even higher. Ha, 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 ha. And it says the young man wanted to do this. That's the big debate with socialism. They want to jack the taxes higher. There's socialist countries in the world today where the taxes are 85%. You make $20 an hour, you take home $3 an hour. But they say you're making $20 an hour. You're not. In Solomon's day, same issue. Same issue today, same issue back then. Exactly. So they jacked the taxes even higher, and the North split off. And the country was divided. So the beginnings, the patriarchs, the Exodus, most important event in the ancient world for 4,000 years is the Exodus. You've got to leave the pagan world, and you've got to slam the door shut behind you. That's the issue of the Exodus. The conquest into Canaan, the monarchy, and the split. Next, the main phase in the Bible is the Babylonian exile and the return. This is Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther. Those books are in order, but the order that they happened in the Bible is Esther, Ezra, Nehemiah. Well, why aren't they in order then? Well, the Bible, you kind of can't put it in order because, like I said, Kings and Chronicles happen, and all these historical things happen at the same time. But it's another entire study.
Well, and actually, there are Bible versions, and I think it might be the Tree of Life version that does adjust the order of some of the books.
Yeah, and it tells you. It tells you. And I can tell you, I want to tell you, this rose chart thing lays it all out for you. And it's one, I get it, after another. I have another chart that I did made by Kenneth Malberg, and I'll just kind of sweep this by you. You might look at this. I remember seeing the periodic...
Drake takes this everywhere.
I remember seeing the periodic chart of the elements in grammar school, and I thought, oh, what is that? But this right here, this is my Bible chart, and it's this way, excuse me.
There you go.
And you look at it and you go,
folks, Drake takes this everywhere.
Yes.
It is in his
bag
all the time. All the time. Hey, Drake, I'll have to share a link to that. I don't know if you have. Where did you get that?
Oh, I forget where I got it.
You've had it a long time.
I've had it a long time. It's starting to get frapped up too. But hey, let me just say these couple.
Yeah, can you recap from the top? Just like not start over, but just say Genesis.
Oh, the beginnings.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Genesis 1-11, the patriarchs, the Exodus, which is Moses to Sinai and getting to Canaan, didn't cross the Jordan yet. The conquest, Joshua Judges, the monarchy, Samuel through Solomon, and then the split. Babylonian exile and the return. This is the 500s BC. And you think, how could this matter? Books written in the 500s BC still dictate how the world is run today. The leaders who ignore the literature of 2500s BC lose all their wars. They lose them all. Those that take it to heart win all their wars. I want so much. I want you to know this. So much I want to tell you. That's the Babylonian exile and the return. 400 years, Malachi to Matthew. We have no literature. The Catholic Bibles put it in there. Tobit, Esdras, Maccabees, Judas.
It's the apocryphal.
The apocryphal literature, the Apocrypha. Mm-hmm. One of my
not to be confused with the Apocalypse.
Yeah, one of my seminary friends, Jim Lanfer, went on and got his PhD at Notre Dame. Brilliant guy. He ate up Hebrew. I was crying in class, but eventually caught on. He caught it. Oh yeah, got it.
That's nice.
Got his PhD in the 400 years between Malachi and Matthew. Guy's just genius. All these languages, Okay, one of the guys in my stool study, one of the professors, knew nine of the ancient languages. It's like, these guys, just learn. Don't be threatened by these people.
We might not even recognize the names of some of those languages. Yeah. They're just so archaic.
Yeah. Don't be threatened by these people. Learn by these people because they want you to know. Jesus, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Some of my studies, I've just been showing you how they overlap and how they intersect and how they describe from different angles, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And then lastly, we have Pentecost, Peter, and Paul. That is Acts and the books. Now, the book of Acts, it's about, Paul ministered for about 15 years, from 45 A.D. to 60 A.D. But we have Pentecost, then we have the ministry of Peter, and the ministry of Paul from 9 to the end of the book. By the way, Paul is the most influential mind of history. The Apostle Paul is.
Even more than Moses?
More than Moses. And I cringe to say this, but more than Jesus. Weird. Why? Because Paul explained Jesus. People didn't see Jesus die on the cross and go, yay, we're saved. Whoa, we have salvation now. His blood covered. Blah, blah, blah. People saw him die and they were like, I can't take this. Paul explains what Jesus means. And I love the picture. Ladies, don't do the ugly, I got my rights. Hick onto Jesus. Jesus liberated the females of the world. And it spins my head and fills me with awe that the book of Romans, the greatest compendium, and it has more leverage in the history of literature than anything else, Paul wrote the book of Romans, gave it to Phoebe, and Phoebe, a female, took it to Rome. And she didn't have a big distribution plan. Okay, we're going to fax this and send it. We're going to text it. She just took a copy of Romans and dropped it off at one of the house churches, and they all started copying it. Ladies at this time in history were stolen, ransacked, robbed. You don't want to know. Taken, stuffed in harems. And Paul gives the book of Romans to Phoebe. It's in the hands of a lady, and she takes it to Rome. And it has more to do with the leveraging of the changing of the thinking of the world than any other document ever written, delivered by a female. Oh, there's so much I want you to know. There's so much I want to tell you. Let us know. We thought we'd do a month-long experiment. We're 2 months into this now. I can teach the whole Bible. I want to. I'm going to. I think if I do it online here versus pastor at a church, then I don't have to deal with nurseries and parking and leaky roofs and toilets and toilet paper and squabbling people and boards and bylaws and loony youth pastors.
It's easy just to
focus.
you could just focus on the Bible.
Yeah. So
yeah, I know what you mean.
You want me to keep going? I'll keep going. I'll keep going for years. I'll do this. Some people, forget about. I probably got told this just this week. Let the Bible. Yeah, just have guests on. Just do guests, and should this turn into a Tonight Show thing? Just
I don't know if
me.
we could start doing skits.
Yeah. So feedback, please.
Yeah.
And those of you who are watching this later, please give a feedback comment because I want to know. I want to cook what you want to eat.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember.
Good call.
Yeah. Many other stories.
Yeah. So we want to build out the menu that feeds you.
Yes, and we've gone a little over. I try to keep us at 30 minutes.
Yeah.
We're at 32 and a half.
That's
and
all right.
Counting, so
you're still handsome.
The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord watch over you. Happy Father's Day yesterday to all you daddios. God is with you, and He will move all the power of heaven. And at your asking, there are 100 million angels waiting for you to ask them for help. Can you help me here? Oh boy, they're dying to help you. The Spirit is waiting. Christ is listening. The God, the power of all heaven, hears your every word, knows your every breath, has all the hairs on your head numbered, counted. Talk to Him. Ask Him. Walk with Him, because those that walk with God change the world for the better. And those that walk with God will never die. Have a powerhouse day.